call came through at 6:47 a.m., right when I was trying to fix the coffee maker in the tribal police station. Same bun machine we'd had since before I joined the force, held together with electrical tape and what my cousin Sosie called aggressive optimism. I'm Daniel Yazzie, been tribal police for 11 years, and I know every wash and canyon road on Red Mesa Reservation like I know the scar on my left hand from that fence post back in high school. The voice on the radio was Dispatch, Clara Benali, who I dated briefly in 2019 until she got tired of me canceling dates for double shifts. Daniel, we got a situation at the old Yellow Creek mine site. Multiple 911 calls. People saying something about workers coming out sick. I grabbed my keys, Dodge Durango with 140,000 miles and a check engine light I'd been ignoring for 6 months, and headed north on Route 12. The Yellow Creek mine shut down in 1986, back when my dad was still working maintenance at the power plant in Farmington. Uranium mine. Government came in, dug up half the mesa, then left us with tailings and contaminated groundwater and a chain link fence with more holes than links. Every few years, some salvage crew gets a permit to pull copper wiring or steel beams from the old processing buildings. Usually causes more problems than it's worth. The morning was clear, that high desert clarity that makes distances lie to you, and I could see the mine structures 10 miles off, metal skeletons against red rock. Radio crackled again. Daniel, Lena Tsinagini called from the clinic. She's saying 2 people came in with symptoms that don't make sense. Fever, but also, Clara's voice dropped. Also aggressive behavior, like they're not themselves. What kind of aggressive? She wouldn't say on the phone, just said to get there fast. I pushed the Durango to 70, watching dust plume behind me. The clinic was actually closer than the mine site, a double-wide with a satellite medical office, grant-funded, understaffed. My sister Yvonne worked there as a medical assistant, had been complaining for months about needing better equipment and more doctors. Last conversation we'd had, 3 days ago, she'd been annoyed with me for missing our nephew Tommy's birthday party. Again. I'd been working a domestic call-out near Canyon de Chelly, and by the time I got done with paperwork, it was past midnight. The clinic parking lot had 4 vehicles when I pulled in, including Yvonne's red Toyota Tacoma with the Native Pride bumper sticker. I radioed Clara that I was on site, then headed inside. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and desert dust. Combination I'd known my whole life, but also something else. Copper, like old pennies. Lena met me at the reception desk. She's 72, trained as a nurse in Albuquerque in the 70s, came back here because nobody else would. Her face had that look I'd seen on combat vets, seen it on my uncle who did 2 tours in Vietnam, like she'd just watched something break that couldn't be fixed. They're in isolation, she said. Or they were. Daniel, I've worked medicine 43 years. This isn't any infection I've seen. Where's Yvonne? With them, trying to. She stopped. From behind the isolation door came a sound. Not a scream exactly. More like someone forgetting how to make human noise. I moved past Lena, hand going to my service weapon, SIG Sauer P320, mandatory training twice a year at the range in Shiprock, even though I didn't know what good a gun would do against disease. The isolation room door was reinforced after the TB outbreak in 2016, but through the wire mesh window I could see Yvonne backing away from an exam table. On the table, a man I recognized. Dennis Husky. Worked construction, 3 kids, owed the tribal credit union money for a truck he'd bought in Gallup. Dennis was trying to stand. His movements were wrong, too jerky like a puppet with tangled strings. His eyes were open, but the pupils had blown out huge, almost no color left. Blood leaked from his nose, his ears, dark against his dark skin. Yvonne, get out of there, I said through the door intercom. She turned. My little sister, 3 years younger than me, smarter by about a mile, and I could see she was terrified. He was fine 10 minutes ago, lucid, then he just changed. Daniel, his temperature is 104 and climbing. Nothing's bringing it down. Dennis lunged at her. I hit the door release, electronic lock installed with Homeland Security money after September 11th, and pulled Yvonne out. Dennis slammed against the plexiglass window, leaving a smear of blood. The sound he made wasn't language. It was rage distilled into noise. The other patient? I asked. Dead, Lena said behind me. 15 minutes ago. Stroke, I think. Or her brain just stopped. She was coherent, then she wasn't, then she was gone. Her name was Rita Manigoats. Worked at the mine site yesterday. Part of that salvage crew from Gallup. My radio crackled. Clara again. Daniel, I'm getting multiple calls now. People at the mine site, people in Coyote Wash, people saying family members are acting strange. BIA dispatch is asking what's happening. I looked at Dennis, if you could still call him Dennis, clawing at the door, looked at Yvonne's hands shaking, looked at Lena's face and saw certainty there. Whatever this was, it was spreading. Clara, call Window Rock. Tell Tribal Council we need emergency protocols. Then call Farmington PD, New Mexico Health Department, CDC if you can get through. Tell them we've got an outbreak situation. Unknown pathogen. Multiple affected. Possible origin point at Yellow Creek Mine. What do I tell people who are calling? Tell them to stay home. Lock doors. Don't go near anyone showing symptoms. Fever, aggression, confusion. And Clara, I paused. Tell them not to go anywhere near that mine. But even as I said it, I knew we were already too late. The mine site was 8 miles from town, but Coyote Wash was only 3, and if people there were already sick. The power went out. Emergency generators kicked in after 5 seconds, but in that darkness I heard Dennis hit the plexiglass again. Harder, and I heard something crack. The plexiglass held, but I wasn't taking chances. I told Lena to get everyone, staff, patients, anyone coherent, into the supply room at the back of the clinic. Then I grabbed Yvonne's arm and pulled her into the hallway. What do you know about hemorrhagic fever? I asked. She shook her head. This isn't Ebola. It's too fast. Rita went from normal to dead in under 2 hours. Dennis went from lucid to that in 15 minutes. And Daniel, the blood work I ran before she died? Her white cell count was through the ceiling. Like her immune system was attacking everything. You think it came from the mine? Where else? That salvage crew has been working there 3 days. According to Rita's intake form, they breached a sealed section yesterday afternoon. She said they all breathed in dust. My phone buzzed. Text from my cousin Sosie. Cops at the wash, people running around crazy. What the hell is happening? I called him. Sosie answered on the first ring, breathing hard. Daniel, I'm watching Mrs. Benali. You know, lives in that blue double-wide near the trading post. She's chasing her grandson with a kitchen knife, not like threatening him, like she doesn't recognize him, like he's prey. Anyone shot? No, but Klee Tadachin fired over her head and she didn't even notice, just kept coming until he tackled her. She bit him, Daniel, drew blood. He's bleeding and cursing and… Shit, now someone else is screaming. This is everywhere. Listen to me. Get everyone who's not infected into the trading post. This concrete block, solid doors. Board up the windows if you can. I'm coming. The mine crew brought this, didn't they? That Yellow Creek site. My dad always said nothing good would ever come from that place. He was right. My father had said the same thing, blamed the mine for the cancer cluster in the 90s, blamed it for the groundwater problems, blamed it for his best friend's lung disease. The government had declared it safe after cleanup in 2004, but safe was relative when you were dealing with uranium tailings and who knows what else buried in those shafts. I grabbed my rifle from the Durango Remington 870, bought it used from a highway patrolman in Aztec. Not because I thought I'd need to shoot anyone, but because I'd learned a long time ago that showing up armed made people listen. Yvonne followed me. "You're not leaving me here," she said. "Someone needs to. Lena can handle it. And if this is contagious, we're probably all exposed anyway." She pulled her medical bag from her truck. "You'll need someone who knows how to treat injuries. Besides, Tommy's at the trading post. His mom dropped him off there this morning before her shift at the school." That settled it. Tommy was 8, small for his age, terrified of thunderstorms and dogs bigger than him. If he was in danger, we were both going. Coyote Wash was 3 miles down Route 12, then another mile on a dirt road that turned into washboard after the first rain and never fully recovered. The trading post, Nakai's trading post, been there since the 40s, sat at the intersection of 3 dirt roads, red adobe with a corrugated steel roof and a Coca-Cola sign from 1987. Parking lot was full of trucks and cars parked at angles, like people had arrived in a hurry. Before we even got out, I saw movement in the scrub brush behind the trading post. A man, I recognized him as Eugene Tedachin, Clee's uncle, staggering in circles. His shirt was covered in blood. As we watched, he dropped to his knees, then face planted in the dirt and went still. "Is he dead?" Yvonne asked. "Maybe. Don't get close." The trading post door opened before we reached it. Sosie leaned out, holding a Winchester lever action that had belonged to his grandfather. "Get inside. Quick." Interior was crowded, maybe 20 people packed into a space meant for half that. I saw familiar faces. Clee Tedachin with a bandage on his arm, already looking pale and sweaty. Mrs. Nakai behind the register, rosary beads in her hands. Tommy sitting against the wall, knees pulled to his chest, looking small and scared. Yvonne went straight to him. I scanned the room. Anyone else bitten or scratched? 2 hands went up. An older woman named Sarah Begay, who I'd known since childhood. She'd been friends with my grandmother. And a teenager whose name I didn't know. "Show me," Yvonne said, and they did. Sarah had a bite on her forearm, semicircle of teeth marks already red and swelling. The teenager, he mumbled his name was Brandon Yazzie, no relation, had scratches on his neck. "How long ago?" I asked. "Sarah got bit maybe 10 minutes ago," Sosie said. "Brandon's been scratched for 20. Brandon was already sweating. My radio crackled, breaking up now, interference from the mesas, but I caught fragments. Clara's voice. "Blockade at Highway Junction, military, quarantine protocol." "Say again, Clara." "Military." Static. Then, National Guard setting up roadblocks. Nobody in or out. Orders from State Health Department. "Daniel, they're not letting anyone leave the reservation." The signal died completely. Silence in the trading post. Then Mrs. Nakai said what everyone was thinking. "They're not coming to help us. They're just making sure we don't spread it." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, but I'd seen enough government responses to know she was probably right. Contain first, treat second. Maybe treat. Window Rock was 60 miles away. The nearest National Guard armory was in Gallup. They'd have troops on the roads within hours, but those troops wouldn't be rushing in with medicine and doctors. They'd be setting up perimeters with guns. "We need to get somewhere defensible," I said. "Somewhere with supplies, water, and only a few ways in." "Canyon del Muerto," Clee said immediately. He was leaning against the wall now, that bite on his arm turning dark. "The old summer campsite. My family's been using it for generations. There's a spring, natural windbreak, only one road in." I knew the place. 3 miles up Canyon del Muerto, accessible only by a dirt track that turned into barely a path after the first mile. Cliff dwellings above, cottonwoods near the spring, and a clear sight line down the canyon approach. Traditional camping grounds, sacred to some families. Defensible. How many vehicles we got? Count came to 8, mix of trucks and SUVs. enough to move everyone if we packed tight. Brandon made a sound. When I turned, he was on his knees, blood running from his nose. Yvonne moved toward him, but I grabbed her arm. "Too late," I said, and I hated how cold my voice sounded, hated that I was probably right. Brandon's eyes rolled back. He convulsed once, twice. Then he stood, that same jerky puppet movement Dennis had shown, and looked at us with blown pupils and no recognition at all. Sosie didn't hesitate. He swung the rifle barrel hard into Brandon's temple, and the kid dropped like stones. Not dead. I could see his chest moving, but unconscious. "We need to go," Sosie said. "Now." We loaded everyone into vehicles. Yvonne took Tommy in her Tacoma. I took the Durango with Mrs. Nakai and Sarah Begay, who was now showing the same fever flush that Brandon had. Sosie led in his Ford F-150, Clee riding shotgun despite looking like death. The convoy moved fast up Route 12, then turned onto the canyon road. In my rearview mirror, I saw movement back at the trading post. People, or what used to be people, staggering into the parking lot. Some were falling. Some were fighting each other. Some were just standing there, swaying like broken toys running down. Sarah moaned in the back seat. Mrs. Nakai was praying in Navajo, words I recognized from ceremonies but didn't fully understand. I pushed the Durango harder, tires spitting rocks on the rough track. The canyon walls rose around us, red sandstone layered with black desert varnish, ancient petroglyphs watching our flight. I played here as a kid, learned to climb on these rocks, learned the names of plants and animals from my uncle. Now it felt like returning to a fortress we'd never left. The summer campsite appeared around a bend, clearing near the spring, fire circles from years of use, lean-tos and ramadas still standing from last season's occupancy. Sosie's truck stopped and he jumped out, already shouting directions. We had maybe an hour before dark, maybe less before the infected found us. Maybe no time at all before the people in our vehicles started turning into them. Sarah Begay died 20 minutes after we arrived at the canyon camp. She went from sweating to seizing to gone while Yvonne tried everything in her medical bag. Nothing worked. When Sarah's heart stopped, Yvonne just sat back on her heels and stared at her hands like they'd betrayed her. Tommy hadn't left his mother's side since we arrived. He kept asking when they'd be able to go home. I didn't have an answer that wouldn't terrify him more than he already was. Clee lasted longer, maybe because he was young, maybe because he got less of the pathogen in his system. He helped us build a barricade across the canyon approach, stacking rocks and dragging dead cottonwood logs, before the fever took him hard. By sunset, he was raving in Navajo and English, talking about something in the mine shaft, something that moved in the dark and smelled like metal and old bones. "We opened a door that was sealed," he said, lucid for maybe 30 seconds. "Concrete wall, 3 feet thick, marked with warning symbols. But the company rep said it was just old storage. Said the symbols were standard radiation warnings, nothing serious. We used jackhammers. The air that came out," he started coughing, blood on his lips. "The air was wrong, thick, alive." Then he wasn't Clee anymore. Sosie had to lock him in one of the lean-tos, using climbing rope to secure the door. We could hear him throwing himself against the walls. Night came fast in the canyon, shadows climbing the cliff faces like flood water. I'd posted sentries at the barricade, myself, Sosie, and 3 others who knew how to shoot. Marcus Begay, Sarah's son, who'd taken his mother's death with quiet rage, Ellen Tadachin, Clee's aunt, armed with a .30-30 that had killed her share of deer, and Charlie Nez, Vietnam vet, hands steady despite his age. Mrs. Nakai organized the camp with the efficiency of someone who'd lived through the government relocation attempts in the 60s, the flu epidemic in 2009, and every bureaucratic nightmare in between. She set up cooking, rationed water from the spring, and designated sleeping areas in the most sheltered spots. Tommy helped her, and I was grateful for anything that kept his mind occupied. Yvonne inventoried medical supplies. I've got antibiotics that won't do anything against this, bandages, some pain medication, and my stethoscope, she said. If anyone gets seriously injured, all I can do is keep them comfortable. That's more than nothing. Daniel, everyone who's been bitten or scratched has died or turned. Every single one. Sarah lasted longest because she was the healthiest. This isn't a virus we can treat. It's a virus we can only avoid. Or survive long enough for someone to come help. She gave me that look she'd perfected over years of being the smart sister dealing with her stubborn older brother. You think help is coming? The military quarantined us. They're not sending rescue teams. They're making sure this doesn't spread. I wanted to argue, but my radio, still dead, suggested she was right. I tried every channel, every frequency. Nothing but static. Either the repeater towers were down, or someone had shut off our communications deliberately. The first infected arrived around midnight. Charlie saw them first. Dark shapes moving up the canyon floor. No lights, no voices. Moving wrong. I counted maybe a dozen before losing track in the darkness. They'd been people I knew. Dennis Husky was there. I recognized his bulk and his electrician's tool belt still hanging from his waist. Eugene Tedachin, Clee's uncle, still wearing the bloody shirt from this morning. Others I couldn't identify, but I knew them anyway. Neighbors, maybe family, definitely people who'd woken up yesterday as themselves and now were something else. Hold fire until they reach the barricade, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Marcus lifted his rifle. Another Remington, popular in these parts, and said, "They were people this morning. They're not people now. They're not anything now." The infected hit the barricade at a run. No hesitation, no self-preservation. Just raw momentum and rage. The logs we'd stacked held for maybe 10 seconds before the sheer weight of bodies started toppling the pile. I fired 3 shots, center mass just like training, and Dennis went down. Got back up. Took 5 more shots before he stayed down. Ellen's .30-30 boomed, louder in the narrow canyon than any rifle should be. Charlie's AR-15, bought from a gun show in Farmington, modified stock, rattled off controlled bursts. Sosie fired the Winchester, worked the lever, fired again, steady as clockwork. We killed them. That's the word, even though they were already gone. Put them down. Stopped them. I don't know what verb makes it easier. The attack lasted maybe 5 minutes. When it ended, 12 bodies lay in front of the barricade. Some of them people I'd gone to school with. Some of them elderly who'd I'd helped with groceries. One of them a woman I'd briefly dated before Yvonne's wedding. In the moonlight, their faces were slack, eyes empty even in death. Behind us, from the lean-to, Clee was screaming. Still screaming. Had been screaming through the entire firefight. "We can't do this all night," Marcus said. His voice was shaking. "There could be hundreds more. Then we do it as long as we have to." But even as I said it, I was doing math I didn't want to do. We'd fired maybe 60 rounds total. I had another 100 in the Durango. Sosie had a box of .30-30 ammunition in his truck. Ellen had brought extra for her rifle. But if waves kept coming, if everyone from Coyote Wash and the mine site and maybe settlements beyond was infected, we'd run out of ammunition long before we ran out of targets. Tommy appeared at my elbow, small and terrified. "Uncle Daniel, are the monsters gone?" I didn't correct him about the monsters. "For now, kiddo. For now." Yvonne called out, "Daniel, you need to see this." She was at the spring, crouched next to the water. In her hand, a small plastic test strip, the kind she used to check for contaminants. The strip had turned dark red. "Blood in the water?" I asked. "Something. Maybe just runoff from the bodies upstream. But if the infection is waterborne," she didn't finish. Didn't need to. Our only water source was potentially contaminated. Mrs. Nakai appeared, rosary still in her hands. "There's a cistern," she said. "Old one, built by the CCC in the 30s, up near the cliff dwellings. My father showed it to me when I was a girl. Rainwater collection, sealed with concrete. It might still be good." "How far?" "Quarter mile. Steep trail." We didn't have a choice. I gathered Sosie, Marcus, and Ellen. "We go at first light. Get water, bring back as much as we can carry. The rest of you maintain the barricade. Watch the canyon approach." Charlie volunteered to stay on watch. "I don't sleep much anyway. You youngsters need rest more than I do." The night stretched. I tried to sleep but kept jerking awake at every sound. Wind in the cottonwoods, rocks sliding down canyon walls, Clee's fading screams from the lean-to. Around 3 a.m. he went quiet. I checked on him through a gap in the logs. He was dead, finally. Face peaceful in a way it hadn't been since the bite. We'd known each other since elementary school. He'd been best man at my wedding, back when I was married. Back before the divorce, before my ex-wife moved to Albuquerque and took our daughter. Clee had gotten me through that. Showed up with beer and let me talk or not talk, whatever I needed. Now he was one more body I'd have to burn or bury. Dawn came cold and clear. The canyon walls caught early light, turning red to orange to gold. Beautiful enough that, for maybe 30 seconds, I forgot everything else. Then I saw the smoke. Rising from Coyote Wash, thick and black. Something big was burning, the trading post, maybe, or the entire settlement. The infection had spread through the community like fire through dry grass, and now actual fire was cleaning up what the virus left behind. "Could be the military," Sosie said, standing next to me. "Controlled burn. Sterilization. Or it could be chaos. Power lines down. Gas leaks. Nobody left to stop it." We gathered our water containers, every bottle, jug, and canteen we could find, and started up the trail to the cistern. The path was steep, cut into the cliff face by people who'd lived here centuries before roads and reservations. Handholds worn smooth by generations. I climbed it as a teenager, showing off for girls. Now I climbed it carrying 50 pounds of empty containers and the weight of knowing everyone behind me would die if we failed. The cliff dwellings appeared above us. Stone rooms built into the rock alcove, mortar still holding after 700 years. My grandmother had told me stories about these places, about the people who lived here before the Navajo, before the Spanish, before anyone with written records. She'd said the old ones knew how to survive, knew how to prepare. The cistern was where Mrs. Nakai remembered. Concrete structure half hidden by rock fall, steel cover rusted but intact. We pried it open with a crowbar from Marcus's truck. The water inside was clear, cold, untouched by whatever had infected the spring below. We filled every container, made 3 trips up and down the cliff trail, legs burning, hands blistering. By noon we had maybe 50 gallons secured, enough for a week if we rationed strictly, longer if it rained. When we returned to camp, Ellen met us with news. More infected coming, maybe 20 this time. And Daniel, she paused. Some of them are carrying weapons. Tools from the mine mostly. Shovels, pickaxes. They're not just mindless anymore. They're adapting. I'd seen this in training videos about riot control, about mob dynamics. Even infected with something that destroyed higher brain function, humans retained patterns, learned behaviors. Tool use, pack hunting. The virus had taken their humanity but left enough neural wiring for them to remember how to kill. "We need more ammunition," I said, "and we need to move the barricade higher up the canyon. Force them into a narrower approach where we can bottleneck them." But even as I said it, I knew we were only delaying the inevitable. Sooner or later, probably sooner, they'd overwhelm us through sheer numbers. Or we'd run out of bullets. Or someone else in our group would show symptoms, get bitten during a fight, turn without warning. Tommy was helping Mrs. Nakai cook, beans and commodity canned meat, heated over a camp stove, and I watched him carefully measure portions like she'd taught him. 8 years old and already learning to ration food during a plague. What kind of world was I trying to save for him? Yvonne sat next to me. The infection rate is slowing, she said. Or maybe we've just run out of people to infect. But I've been thinking about what Clee said about the sealed room in the mine, about the air being wrong. What if this wasn't natural? What if it was something buried deliberately? Biological weapon? Or waste? Experimental material? Something from the Cold War that got dumped in an abandoned mine shaft and forgotten. Wouldn't be the first time the government used reservation land as a dumping ground. She was right about that. The uranium mines themselves were proof. Dug, exploited, abandoned, leaving us with cancer and contamination. Why not biological material too? Seal it in concrete, post some warnings, hope it stayed buried forever. Except nothing stays buried forever. Eventually, some salvage crew with a permit and a deadline comes along with jackhammers. The second attack came at dusk. Ellen was right about 20 infected, wrong about their behavior. These moved in coordinated fashion, almost military. They split into 2 groups, hitting the barricade from different angles. The ones with tools attacked the logs directly, smashing and prying, while the others provided cover by rushing any shooter who exposed themselves. We drove them back barely, but we lost Marcus. He took a pickaxe to the shoulder, and even though we pulled him back behind the barricade, even though Yvonne packed the wound and gave him every antibiotic she had, we all knew he was finished. The metal had gone deep, probably nicked bone, and more importantly, it had broken skin. He died 4 hours later, fast like the others. Yvonne held his hand. I watched from across the camp, useless. We burned his body on a pyre built from dead wood. Not enough wood for a proper ceremony, but Mrs. Nakai sang the prayers anyway. Tommy stood between me and Yvonne, crying silently. He'd stopped asking when we were going home. That night, I did math with bullets instead of hours. 2 major attacks, maybe 100 rounds expended. We'd killed probably 30 infected total. At this rate, we had ammunition for 2, maybe 3 more major assaults before we were down to rocks and harsh language. The barricade wouldn't hold much longer, too much damage from the pickaxes and shovels. We needed a new defensive position. Higher ground, Charlie said. He'd been thinking the same thing I had. Up near the cliff dwellings. Narrow approach, stone walls for cover, only one way up. It's also only one way down, I pointed out. If they trap us up there. If they trap us down here, we're already dead. At least up there, we can see them coming from a distance. He was right. We'd chosen the summer camp because it was familiar, comfortable, traditional. But traditional wasn't defensive. We needed fortress, not home. We moved at dawn, carried everything we could up that cliff trail. Water, food, ammunition, medical supplies. Took 6 trips and left us exhausted. The cliff dwellings were small, maybe room for 20 people if we packed tight, but the position was strong. 30 feet of sheer rock face below, rock alcove above, stone walls on 3 sides. A determined climber could make it up, but not quickly, not under fire. We'd barely finished moving supplies when we saw them gathering below. Not attacking yet, just waiting. We'd barely finished moving supplies when the 3rd attack came. This time they came in the hundreds. I counted until I lost count. Maybe 200 infected streaming up the canyon like floodwater. The entire population of Coyote Wash and probably settlements beyond. Everyone who'd been exposed at the mine site, everyone they'd bitten, everyone who'd died and risen with blown pupils and rage instead of consciousness. From our position in the cliff dwellings, I could see the whole nightmare unfolding below. They hit the abandoned barricade first, tore through it like paper. Then they spread out, searching the camp. Finding nothing. Some stood still, swaying. Others picked up objects, tools, pots, blankets, examined them, dropped them. Still learning, still adapting. One of them, I recognized her as Helen Nez, Charlie's younger sister. Looked up directly at the cliff dwellings. For a moment I thought she saw us, recognized us. Then she opened her mouth and made a sound. Not a scream, not a howl. Something between the two, rising and falling, modulating. A call. The others answered. 200 voices making that same wrong sound, and the harmonics of it in the narrow canyon made my teeth hurt. "They're communicating," Yvonne whispered. Then they started climbing. Not the trail, too narrow, too controlled. They came straight up the rock face, using handholds and footholds I wouldn't have attempted with climbing gear. Some fell, smashed on the rocks below, didn't get back up, but others made it higher and higher. "Fire when they're in range," I said. "Conserve ammunition. Make every shot count." Charlie fired first, his AR-15 set to single shot now, years of Vietnam discipline showing. An infected man dropped 50 feet, bounced, lay still. Ellen's .30-30 boomed. Another body fell. Sosie worked the Winchester lever like a machine, methodical and calm. I aimed at Helen Nez. She was 20 feet below us, moving with impossible grace on stone that should have been unclimbable. I put the crosshairs on her center mass and squeezed the trigger. The Remington kicked. Helen fell backward, hit rock, slid down into the pile of bodies accumulating below. The sound of her falling was lost in the thunder of gunfire. We held them. For 20 minutes we held them, bodies falling like rain. The cliff face below us turned slick with blood. Some of the infected tried to climb over their own dead and slipped. Others made it higher before we dropped them. None made it all the way to the dwelling. Then Sosie's Winchester clicked empty. "Last magazine," he said. Ellen's rifle went dry 30 seconds later. She switched to a pistol, Ruger LCP she'd been carrying in her pocket, but a .380 wasn't stopping anyone unless the shot was perfect. Charlie fired his last round and threw the AR-15 aside. "I'm done." My Remington had maybe 10 shells left. I loaded 5, saved 5, picked targets carefully. Closest climbers first. An infected woman in a torn shirt. A teenager with blood-matted hair. An old man who'd taught Sunday school at the Baptist church in Red Mesa. Click. Empty. I loaded the last 5 shells. 5 shots between us and being overrun. Then the infected stopped climbing. Just stopped. The ones still on the cliff face clung there, motionless. The ones below stood in place, swaying. All of them silent. Helen Nez, not dead after all, crawling on the rocks with a chest wound that should have killed her, looked up at us. Her face was wrong, twisted, but for just a second I saw recognition there. Saw her seeing us. She opened her mouth. That modulating call again, but different this time. Lower, sustained. As one, the infected turned and walked away. Down the canyon. Coordinated, purposeful. Leaving their dead behind. "What the hell?" Sosie said. Yvonne was staring after them. "They're regrouping, or conserving their numbers. This isn't mindless anymore. Daniel, they're learning, adapting. The virus is using what's left of their brains." I watched the last of them disappear around the canyon bend. Maybe 150 still mobile. 50 bodies lay on the rocks below us, and I tried not to think about how many of them I'd known personally. Tried not to think about Helen Nez teaching me to make fry bread when I was Tommy's age. "We need ammunition," I said. "We need food. We need a plan that isn't wait here to die." Charlie was checking his AR-15, even though we all knew it was empty. Old habit from the war, probably. Always check your weapon even when you know the answer. The National Guard has supplies. Medical equipment, ammunition, food. They've got everything we need. They've also got orders to keep us contained, Ellen pointed out. "You think they're going to just hand over supplies to people inside the quarantine zone?" "Maybe not hand over, But those roadblocks can't be everywhere. And the guard troops are kids, mostly. Farmington High School graduates doing weekend warrior duty. They're scared as we are. I considered it. The nearest roadblock would be at the Route 12 junction with Highway 666, about 8 miles from our current position. We'd need to get there, get through or around the guard, and get back before the infected reorganized for another assault. In the dark, with no ammunition. It was a terrible plan. It was also our only plan. "I'll go," I said. "Sosie, you're in charge here. If I'm not back by dawn." "You'll be back," he said. "You're too stubborn to die out there." "Take me with you," Yvonne said. "Absolutely not." "Daniel, you'll need someone who knows what medical supplies to grab. Someone who can talk to the guard medics. Someone who my nephew needs alive," I finished. "You stay with Tommy. That's not negotiable." She looked like she wanted to argue. She had that expression, the one that usually preceded her winning whatever fight we were having. But she glanced at Tommy sitting against the stone wall, small and quiet, and nodded. Mrs. Nakai approached with a bundle wrapped in cloth. Food for the journey. Not much, but enough. And this. She pulled out something I hadn't seen in years. A medicine bundle, leather pouch with herbs and cornmeal, the kind my grandmother had kept. For protection. Old protection, but sometimes the old ways work when new ones fail. I took it, tied it to my belt next to the empty magazine pouches. Probably wouldn't stop bullets or infection, but the weight of it felt right somehow. Anchoring. Charlie handed me a hunting knife. Fixed blade, 7 inches, edge-worn but sharp. Vietnam issue. Kept me alive then. Your turn to borrow it. Ellen gave me a flashlight, maglite, heavy enough to use as a club, and a bottle of water from our dwindling supply. "Come back," she said. "We can't afford to lose anyone else." The climb down the cliff trail in darkness was every bit as terrifying as I'd expected. I used the maglite sparingly, didn't want to advertise my position, and felt my way along the rock face by memory and luck. Twice I almost fell. Once I froze completely, certain I heard movement below, certain the infected were waiting. Nothing, just wind and my own fear. The canyon floor was littered with bodies from our earlier firefights. I picked my way through, trying not to look at faces. Failed. Recognized at least a dozen people. Felt sick. Kept moving. The Durango was where I'd left it. Keys still in the ignition, because who locks their vehicle during an apocalypse? Engine turned over on the first try, 140,000 miles and a check engine light, but the old Dodge was still running. I killed the headlights and drove by moonlight, following Route 12 north toward the highway junction. The landscape looked wrong in the darkness. Familiar landmarks turned strange. The rock formations I'd known my whole life became alien sculptures. The road became a river of shadow. I passed the ruins of Coyote Wash. Trading post burned to foundation, houses dark, one trailer fully engulfed in flames that nobody was fighting. 8 miles took 20 minutes of careful driving. I could see the roadblock from half a mile away. Generator-powered floodlights, military vehicles positioned across both lanes, concertina wire strung between Jersey barriers. 3 Humvees, 2 deuce-and-a-half trucks, maybe a dozen soldiers visible. New Mexico National Guard, probably from the 206th Military Police Company out of Farmington. I stopped the Durango a quarter mile out and approached on foot. The perimeter was better organized than I'd expected, sentries posted, fields of fire established, backup positions prepared. These weren't weekend warriors playing soldier. These were scared kids with real training, following real orders to shoot anyone trying to breach quarantine. I circled wide, staying in the scrub brush and arroyos, looking for a gap. Found none. The roadblock was too well constructed, too well manned. I'd need a distraction, something to pull their attention while I slipped through. Or I could try talking to them. I stood up, raised my hands, and walked toward the checkpoint. Don't shoot. Tribal police. I need to talk to whoever's in charge. Floodlights swiveled, pinning me. Half a dozen rifles tracked my movement. A voice from behind the barriers. Young, male, trying to sound authoritative. Stop right there. This is a quarantine zone. You are not authorized to. I know what this is, I called back. I'm Officer Daniel Yazzie, Red Mesa Tribal Police. We have civilians trapped in Canyon del Muerto. We need medical supplies and ammunition. We've been fighting infected for 2 days with almost no support. Silence. Then a different voice, older, female, carrying the weight of actual authority. Officer Yazzie, this is Captain Montoya, 206th MP. I can't allow anyone through this checkpoint. Orders are absolute quarantine until CDC assessment teams arrive. When will that be? Unknown. Could be days. Could be longer. The infection spread to 3 other communities before we got the perimeter established. This is a national security situation. Captain, we have children in that canyon. Elderly. We're almost out of food and water. We're completely out of ammunition. If the infected attack again. Officer, I understand your situation, but I have my orders. No one crosses this line. No one. If I let you through, if you're infected, you could spread this to Farmington, to Albuquerque, to the whole state. I can't risk that. I'm not infected. I haven't been bitten. I can prove. There's no test. No way to know if you're incubating. I'm sorry, but you need to return to your people and wait for official assistance. I stood there in the floodlights, hands raised, and felt the weight of failure settling on my shoulders. We were going to die in that canyon, starve or thirst or get overrun, because some captain was following orders that valued containment over human life. Then I heard something behind me, that modulating call, the same sound I'd heard from the infected at the cliff dwellings. I turned. The infected were coming up Route 12, not running but walking in formation, maybe 50 of them spread across the road in a line, coordinated, purposeful, coming straight for the checkpoint. Contact! Someone yelled from the barrier. Multiple infected approaching from the south. The floodlights swung away from me, illuminating the infected. In that moment of chaos, I ran, not toward the checkpoint but perpendicular, toward the supply trucks parked behind the Humvees. The soldiers were focused on the approaching threat, raising weapons, shouting commands. I reached the nearest truck, deuce and a half with canvas cover, medical stenciled on the side, and climbed into the back. Inside, exactly what we needed. MRE cases, water pallets, medical supply crates, and thank you God ammunition boxes. 5.56 NATO for the AR-15s, 7.62 for hunting rifles, 9mm for pistols, even 12-gauge shotgun shells. Gunfire erupted behind me. The soldiers were engaging the infected, controlled bursts, disciplined fire. I grabbed what I could carry, 2 cases of MREs, a water case, 1 medical crate, 2 ammo boxes, and dropped them out the back of the truck. Made 3 trips, building a pile in the shadows. The firefight intensified. I risked a look. The infected were taking casualties but still advancing, and now I understood. They'd regrouped for this. A coordinated assault on the military checkpoint, drawing attention, creating chaos. Creating an opportunity for someone to steal supplies. Had they known I was here? Had the virus preserved enough intelligence for planning? Or was this just coincidence? The infected attacking any human position they found, and I was lucky enough to exploit it? Didn't matter. I loaded the Durango, threw everything in the back, and started the engine. Killed the lights again and drove south on Route 12, away from the firefight, back toward the canyon. In the rearview mirror, I saw the floodlights sweeping, heard the gunfire continuing. Saw one of the Humvees explode, Molotov cocktail, maybe, or just gas tank ruptured by stray rounds. The infected were going to lose that fight. The soldiers had training, position, and overwhelming firepower, but they'd bought me time. They'd helped me. The virus had helped me save my people. That thought followed me all the way back to Canyon del Muerto, heavy as the supplies in the truck bed, cold as the desert night. I made it back to the cliff dwellings just before dawn, hauling supplies up the trail in darkness, legs burning from the climb. Sosi met me at the top, helped carry the last load. "We heard gunfire," he said. "Thought you were dead." Almost was. The infected attacked the checkpoint, distracted the guard long enough for me to grab supplies. "They attacked to help you?" Don't know if help is the right word. Maybe they were just attacking any human position they found. But the timing was convenient. We unpacked everything in the pre-dawn light. 200 MREs, enough for 3 weeks if we rationed. 40 gallons of water. Medical supplies including antibiotics, pain medication, bandages, and a defibrillator we probably wouldn't need but having felt good anyway. And ammunition, maybe 2,000 rounds of mixed caliber, enough to hold off several major assaults. Mrs. Nakai organized distribution immediately, her talent for logistics shining even in disaster. Tommy helped her inventory, carefully counting MREs and writing numbers on a notepad. He'd stopped asking about going home. Now he asked about practical things: how much water per person per day, how long the food would last, whether the ammunition would be enough. 8 years old and doing triage math. What had we done to him? Yvonne pulled me aside. "I've been monitoring everyone's health. No new symptoms. No bites or scratches from any contact. We might actually be clear. No one in our group is currently infected or showing signs." "That's good." "It is. But Daniel, we can't stay up here forever. Eventually we'll run out of supplies again. Eventually they'll find a way up, or we'll make a mistake, or someone will get sick from something we missed. This is a holding position, not a solution." She was right. The cliff dwellings had bought us time. The supplies had bought us more time. But time wasn't the same as salvation. We needed actual rescue, CDC teams with treatment, military evacuation, something beyond just surviving another day. That night, with our group fed and resupplied, I called a council, everyone old enough to understand what was happening. Sat in a circle in the largest cliff dwelling, talking by firelight. "We have 2 choices," I said. "We can stay here and hope rescue comes before we run out of supplies again. Or we can try to break out. Fight our way through the infected, get to vehicles, drive for the checkpoint and hope they let us through to Farmington." "The checkpoint won't let us through," Ellen said. "You just saw that." "Maybe they will if we're being chased by infected." Captain Montoya seemed reasonable. "And she has to know by now that I stole supplies. Might be grateful we're not her problem anymore if we can make it to Farmington proper. Or she might shoot us to maintain quarantine," Charlie countered. "Standing orders are standing orders." Mrs. Nakai spoke up. "There's a third option, the old mine." Everyone turned to look at her. "Yellow Creek Mine is where this started," she continued. "Whatever was in that sealed room, it infected the salvage crew. But Clee said they'd breached a concrete wall, sealed deliberately. Maybe whoever sealed it left something else. Information, treatment, a way to counteract the infection. Or maybe there's just more infection," I said. "More of whatever created this." "Possibly. But if we're going to die anyway, if we're going to starve in these caves or get torn apart trying to escape, why not try to find the source? Maybe there's something there that could help." I wanted to dismiss it as desperate fantasy. But I'd seen the infection's progression, how it adapted, learned, preserved just enough human intelligence to coordinate attacks. That wasn't natural evolution. That was engineered. And engineered things had blueprints, protocols, countermeasures. "Maybe. The mine is 5 miles from here," Sosi said. "We'd have to go through infected territory. They'd see us coming." "Not if we go at night," Charlie said. "New moon is tomorrow, darkest night of the month. We move fast, stay quiet, use the arroyos and washes for cover. I've done night operations in worse terrain." "Who goes?" Ellen asked. I looked around the circle. Small team, fast and quiet. Me, Charlie, Tsosi, and Ellen, we all shoot, we all know the terrain. The rest stay here, maintain the position, defend if the infected attack. "Daniel, if you don't come back," Yvonne started. "Then you're in charge. You're the smartest person here, you know it and I know it. Tommy stays with you. Mrs. Nakai helps with logistics. You hold this position until rescue comes or supplies run out." She looked like she wanted to argue. Instead, she just nodded. "Tommy came over after the council broke up. You're going to fight the monsters again. I'm going to try to stop them, so they're not monsters anymore." "What if you can't stop them?" I crouched down, I level with him. "Then I want you to remember something. Your mom, Yvonne, she's the strongest person I know. Stronger than me, smarter than me. You listen to her, you do what she says, and you'll be okay. You understand." He nodded, solemn, then hugged me, fierce, desperate, and I felt the weight of every choice that had led to this moment. Every missed birthday party, every canceled visit, every time I'd chosen the job over family. "I love you, kiddo," I said. "Love you too, Uncle Daniel." We prepared through the next day. Checked weapons. Charlie's AR-15 loaded with the 5.56 I'd stolen. Ellen's .30-30. Sosie's Winchester. My Remington 870. Packed light, water, minimal food, first aid supplies, flashlights with red filters to preserve night vision. Mrs. Nakai gave each of us a medicine bundle like the one she'd given me at the checkpoint. "Old protection," she said again. "Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but carrying it reminds you who you are, where you come from, and that's worth something." We moved out at midnight, descending the cliff trail in total darkness, feeling our way step by step. The infected below were still there. I could hear them moving, that slight shuffle and sway, but they didn't react to our presence. Either they didn't see us or they were waiting to see what we'd do. The canyon floor was a maze of shadow and rock. We moved through it like ghosts, years of hunting deer and tracking livestock in this terrain making us silent. Charlie led, Vietnam training showing in every careful step. I brought up the rear, constantly checking behind us. No pursuit. The infected let us go. "They want us to reach the mine," Yvonne had said before we left. "They know it's where this started. Maybe the virus wants to return to source." I thought she was being paranoid. Now, moving through darkness unmolested, I wondered if she was right. Yellow Creek Mine appeared as we crested a ridge. Skeletal structures black against stars, chain link fence torn and hanging, warning signs faded but still visible. Danger. Radiation hazard. Authorized personnel only. No trespassing. The salvage crew had cut a new gate in the fence, vehicle tracks leading to the main processing building. We followed those tracks, weapons ready, expecting ambush at every shadow. The building was concrete and corrugated steel, 3 stories tall, windows broken out, graffiti from local kids covering the lower walls. Inside, darkness and the smell of old metal, bird shit and something else. That copper penny smell from the clinic. Old blood. Charlie clicked on his red filter flashlight. The beam revealed the salvage crew's path. Equipment abandoned, tools dropped, a trail of blood leading deeper into the building. We followed it to a stairwell descending into the mine proper. The stairs went down 3 levels, each one darker and colder than the last. The blood trail continued. At the bottom, a tunnel, concrete walls, and at the end of that tunnel, the breached seal. Clee had been right. 3 feet of concrete, broken open by jackhammers, warning symbols still visible on the fragments. Old symbols, not standard radiation markers. These were military Cold War era, the kind you saw on chemical weapon storage. Beyond the breach, a room. We entered carefully, lights sweeping the space. It was a laboratory or had been decades ago. Stainless steel tables rusted through, cabinets with broken glass, papers scattered on the floor, most of them too degraded to read. And in the center of the room, a large stainless steel tank, maybe 8 feet tall, with pipes leading up through the ceiling. The tank was open, hatch on top unsealed, empty. "They let it out," Ellen whispered. "Whatever was in there. The salvage crew opened it and it got out." I picked up one of the less degraded papers. U.S. Army header. Date: March 1963. Classification: Top secret, biological. Most of the text was illegible, but I caught fragments. Experimental airborne agent shows 94% infection rate in primate trials. Subject retention of motor function with complete loss of higher reasoning. Recommend immediate termination of program Stone Crow and secure storage of all samples. Unsuitable for deployment due to uncontrollable spread and mutation rate. Program Stone Crow, a bioweapon, developed during the Cold War, tested on God knows what, deemed too dangerous to use, and buried in an abandoned mine on reservation land where nobody would ask questions, until someone did. "Daniel," Charlie said, "you need to see this." He was pointing at another cabinet, this one still sealed with a padlock. I shot the lock off. Noise be damned, we were miles from anyone, and opened it. Inside vials, dozens of them carefully preserved in foam inserts, each labeled with medical shorthand I didn't understand. But one label was in plain English. Stone Crow counteragent, experimental, not tested on human subjects. Counteragent, Sosie said. They made a cure. Or they tried to, Ellen corrected. Not tested on humans. Could be as dangerous as the virus. Or it could save everyone, I said, carefully removing the vials. There were maybe 40 of them, each containing a clear liquid. We take these back. Let Yvonne analyze them. If there's any chance. A sound from above. That modulating call. The infected had followed us after all. Or they'd known where we were going and simply waited for us to find what we came for. Move, Charlie said. Back to the stairs. We need high ground. We ran through the laboratory, down the tunnel, up the stairwell with footsteps echoing below us. Emerged into the processing building to find infected streaming through the doors. Not just a few, dozens, maybe hundreds. I recognized faces in the crowd, people from Coyote Wash, from Red Mesa, from settlements I'd visited on patrol. All of them transformed, all of them focused on us. On the vials. One figure stepped forward from the mass. Helen Nez, Charlie's younger sister, still walking despite wounds that should have killed her days ago. She saw me, saw the vials I was carrying, and opened her mouth. The call rose, fell, modulated into something almost like words, almost like ours. We fought our way out. Charlie's AR-15 chattered, Ellen's .30-30 boomed. Sosie worked the Winchester lever like his life depended on it, which it did. I kept the vials secure in my pack and fired the Remington one-handed when I had clear shots. We made it to the fence, then beyond into the scrub brush and arroyos we knew better than the infected ever would. Behind us, the mine site erupted with that modulating call, hundreds of voices, furious, demanding. They wanted the counteragent. The virus wanted it destroyed, which meant it might actually work. We ran through the night, compass bearing taking us back toward Canyon del Muerto, infected pursuing but falling behind because we knew the terrain and they didn't. By dawn, we were a mile from the canyon, exhausted, nearly out of ammunition, but alive, and carrying maybe salvation in 40 glass vials. The climb back up the cliff trail was agony. My legs were rubber, lungs burning, but I forced myself up step by step. Sosie behind me, Ellen ahead, Charlie bringing up the rear and watching for pursuit. Yvonne met us at the top. I handed her the pack with the vials. Cold War bioweapon called Stone Crow, I said between gasps. These might be the cure. Experimental, not tested on humans. But it's all we've got. She opened the pack, examined the vials carefully. I'll need to analyze these, figure out dosing, test on. On me, I said. I'm exposed. We all are. Probably inhaled particles from the mine, maybe got blood on us during the fight. If this works, we'll know. If it doesn't, I shrugged. Then we're no worse off. Daniel, that's not how medical trials work. This isn't a trial. This is survival. Test it on me. If I don't die or turn, test it on the others. If it works, we synthesize more somehow, we cure everyone we can reach. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but I'm doing this properly. Blood draw first, baseline vitals, then administration. If you show any adverse reactions, I need to know immediately. The process took an hour. Yvonne worked with scientific precision despite having minimal equipment. Drew blood, checked heart rate and temperature, examined my eyes and reflexes, then loaded one vial into an improvised rig. This is going to hurt, she warned. It did. The counteragent burned going in, like fire in my veins. I gritted my teeth and tried not to scream in front of Tommy, who was watching with wide eyes. The pain lasted maybe 5 minutes. Then it faded, leaving me with a strange tingling sensation and a clarity I hadn't felt in days, like fog lifting. How do you feel? Yvonne asked. Good. Better than good. Like I just slept for 12 hours and had coffee. She checked my vitals again. Temperature dropping. Heart rate normalizing. Pupils responsive. Daniel, I think it's working. Over the next 6 hours, she administered the counteragent to everyone in our group who'd been potentially exposed. Everyone reacted the same way: initial pain, then improvement. Charlie, who'd been showing early symptoms of fever, recovered completely. Ellen's minor wound stopped festering. We need to get this to the checkpoint, I said. If the guard can mass-produce this, synthesize it in military labs, we can cure everyone. End this. Easier said than done, Sosie pointed out. The infected are still down there, and they want this destroyed. You saw how they reacted at the mine. Then we fight through them. We've got ammunition, we've got the cure, and we've got nothing left to lose. Mrs. Nakai had been listening quietly. Now she spoke. The infected are not monsters, Daniel. They're our people, our family, our neighbors. If this cure works, we shouldn't kill them. We should save them. How? They're trying to kill us. Because the virus controls them. But what if we could administer the cure without fighting? What if we could reach them? I thought about Helenez looking at me, that moment of recognition before the virus took over again. Thought about Dennis Hosky, Klee Tadachin, Rita Manigotes, all the people who died or turned, who might still be reachable if we could just get the cure into their systems. Aerosol delivery, Yvonne said suddenly. If we can vaporize the counteragent, create a mist or fog, we could expose multiple infected at once. Their lungs would absorb it just like they absorbed the virus. How do we vaporize 40 vials of liquid? She thought for a moment. Fire extinguisher. We empty one out, fill it with counteragent solution, dilute it so we have enough, then spray it like fog. Get upwind of the infected. Let them breathe it in. That might work, Charlie said. Or it might just waste our only cure. It's worth trying, Mrs. Nakai said. These are our people. We should try to save them. I looked at Tommy, sitting quiet against the wall. Looked at Yvonne, at Sosie, at all the people who'd survived this long on courage and hope. Looked down at the infected standing vigil below. 100 dead-eyed faces that used to belong to living, breathing human beings with families and dreams and futures. We try to save them, I said, but we bring weapons in case it doesn't work. We had 3 fire extinguishers in the camp, old ABC dry chemical ones that Mrs. Nakai had brought from her house years ago. We emptied one, rinsed it out with precious water. Then Yvonne carefully mixed the counteragent solution. 40 vials diluted into 5 gallons. Math said it should be enough for maybe 50 people if the dosing was right. If we were wrong about any of this, we just wasted the cure and doomed everyone. I'm going down alone, I said. Rest of you cover from above. If the infected attack, shoot. If they let me approach, I'll deploy the aerosol. Daniel, Yvonne started. I know, it's risky, but we can't risk everyone. And I'm tribal police. This is literally my job. Protect and serve. I descended the cliff trail at noon, fire extinguisher strapped to my back, handgun at my hip for emergencies. The infected watched me come. Didn't attack. Didn't retreat. Just watched. Helen Nez stood at the front of the group. Her wounds had somehow closed, the virus keeping her body functional beyond what should have been possible. She tilted her head when she saw me, almost curious. I stopped 20 feet away. Helen, I don't know if you can understand me, but I'm going to try to help you. Help all of you. This might hurt, but it might also bring you back. I triggered the fire extinguisher. The counteragent mist sprayed out, carried by the slight breeze straight into the crowd of infected. They breathed it in, couldn't help but breathe it in, and for a moment nothing happened. Then Helen screamed. Not that modulating call, a human scream. Pain and confusion and horror as consciousness returned and she remembered what she'd been, what she'd done. She dropped to her knees. Others followed. All around me, the infected were collapsing, screaming, crying, returning to themselves with all the trauma that entailed. Some were just confused. Some were broken by realization. All of them were suddenly terribly human again. I sprayed until the extinguisher was empty, covered maybe 50 people. The others, the 100 or so still infected further down the canyon, started to retreat. The virus knew what was happening, knew it was losing. Helen looked up at me with her own eyes. Daniel? Oh God. Daniel, what did I do? What did we do? Nothing you could control. Helen, listen to me. We have a cure. We can fix this. But we need help. We need to get this to the Guard, to the CDC so they can make more. She nodded, tears cutting tracks through the blood and dirt on her face. Okay. Tell me what to do. Over the next hour, the Cured helped us organize. 50 people, traumatized but human again, willing to help save the rest. We sent runners, the youngest and fastest, to the checkpoint with vials of counteragent and written instructions from Yvonne. Sent others to round up survivors from other settlements. Kept weapons ready in case the still infected attacked. They didn't. They just kept retreating, moving further up the canyon, away from us. The virus was smart enough to know it was losing, maybe smart enough to know when to give up. Captain Montoya's response came 3 hours later. A convoy of military vehicles, medics, scientists, and enough firepower to fight a small war. But they weren't there to fight. They were there to cure. Officer Yazzie, Montoya said when she found me, you stole military supplies. Yes, ma'am. And broke quarantine protocols. Yes, ma'am. And potentially saved thousands of lives by finding a counteragent that our own government had buried and forgotten. She held out her hand. Well done. I shook it, too tired to feel proud. The cure worked. Over the next week, military medical teams administered counteragent to every infected person they could find. Some died anyway, the virus had damaged too much. Some, like Dennis Hosky, had been dead too long. Their bodies kept functional by viral activity but too damaged to recover consciousness. But most survived. Most returned to being themselves, broken and traumatized but alive. The final count, 347 infected out of maybe 800 people on the reservation. 89 dead, 2 damaged to save or killed before we found the cure. 258 saved by 40 vials of liquid that the U.S. Army had buried in 1963 and tried to forget. Program Stone Crow officially never existed. The counteragent officially was developed by the CDC in response to the outbreak. The uranium mine officially had nothing to do with Cold War bioweapons research. Officially. I didn't care about official. I cared that Tommy was safe, that Yvonne was safe, that Mrs. Nakai could go back to running the clinic, that Sosi could complain about his truck's transmission again, that Ellen could return to teaching at the elementary school, that life could return to something approximating normal. 3 weeks after the outbreak, I stood in the canyon at dawn. Same spot where we'd fought, same rocks where bodies had piled, and it looked peaceful, clean. The military had cleared everything, sanitized the site, even filled in the cliff trail approach with concrete barriers marked authorized personnel only. Helen Nez found me there. She'd been released from the medical facility in Farmington 2 days earlier, cleared both physically and psychologically, though cleared seemed like a generous term for someone who remembered eating human flesh while the virus controlled them. I keep coming back here, she said, trying to remember it differently, but I can't. Nobody expects you to forget. No, they just expect me to live with it. She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. Charlie told me you shot me. Chest wound. Should have killed me. But the virus kept me alive long enough to get cured. I'm sorry. Don't be. You did what you had to do. And Daniel, thank you for not giving up on us. For trying to save us instead of just killing us all. She walked away before I could respond, leaving me alone with the rising sun and the memory of her face covered in blood, calling out in that modulating voice for the counteragent we'd stolen from a government that had tried to bury its mistakes on our land. The Yellow Creek mine was sealed again, this time with federal oversight, Army Corps of Engineers, and enough concrete to keep it shut for the next 1,000 years. The laboratory was classified, all records destroyed or disappeared into government archives with top-secret stamps. The salvage company that had breached the seal was bankrupt from lawsuits and federal fines. And Red Mesa Reservation went back to dealing with the same problems we'd always had: poverty, unemployment, inadequate health care, contaminated water from uranium mining. The outbreak had brought national attention for maybe 2 weeks before the news cycle moved on. Some grant money appeared for mental health services. The clinic got new equipment, but fundamentally, nothing changed. Except us. I'd put in for a transfer, not leaving the force, but moving to a position that didn't require me to work nights and weekends and miss Tommy's birthdays. Yvonne had been right about a lot of things during those desperate days, but she'd been especially right about this. Competence created responsibility, but responsibility shouldn't erase the personal connections that made competence matter in the first place. Tommy was doing okay as any 8-year-old could be after experiencing an apocalypse. He'd started drawing pictures of the canyon, of the cliff dwellings, of the moment when the infected started screaming as they returned to themselves. His school counselor said it was healthy processing. I just thought it looked like nightmares made visible. Sosi had already turned the outbreak into a story he told at the Trading Post, heavily embellished, featuring his own heroism more prominently than accuracy would suggest, ending with, "And that's why you always trust your cousin when he says the mine is cursed." Mrs. Nakai would shake her head and correct the worst exaggerations, but she let him tell it. We all needed ways to process what had happened. The Durango finally died. Transmission gave out 2 days after the quarantine lifted, like it had been holding on through sheer determination and gave up once the crisis ended. I replaced it with a used Ford Explorer from a dealer in Farmington, 90,000 miles. No check engine light yet. When it inevitably appeared, I'd probably ignore it for 6 months, just like I'd done with the Dodge. Some habits don't change, even after the world almost ends. 6 months after the outbreak, I was back on Route 12, driving to investigate a reported livestock theft near Coyote, Washington. The new Explorer ran smooth, radio worked perfectly, and the landscape looked exactly like it always had. Red rock and blue sky and desert stretching to horizons that seemed infinite. I passed the turnoff for Canyon del Muerto. Didn't stop. Didn't need to. The cliff dwellings had saved us, and now they sat empty again, waiting for the next crisis or the next summer camping season, whichever came first. Past the ruins of the old Yellow Creek mine, concrete barriers and chain-link fence and warning signs in English and Navajo. A historical marker had appeared, installed by some government agency, site of 2025 viral outbreak sealed for public safety. No mention of Program Stone Crow. No mention of Cold War bioweapons. Just another government acknowledgement that omitted more than it revealed. I kept driving. The livestock theft turned out to be a misunderstanding. Neighbors' cattle had broken through a fence, wandered onto someone else's property, and both parties were ready to settle it with a handshake and some fence repair. The kind of call I'd been handling for 11 years, the kind that made up 99% of tribal police work. Normal, boring, exactly what I needed. On the drive back, my phone rang. Yvonne. "Hey," I said, "everything okay?" "Yeah, just wanted to remind you that Tommy has a soccer game tomorrow, 10 a.m. at the elementary school. You said you'd come." I checked my mental calendar. No conflicts, no emergencies, no reasons to cancel. "I'll be there. Promise. Promise." She hung up and I continued south on Route 12, toward home, toward ordinary responsibilities and everyday connections and a life that had almost ended but hadn't. The sun was setting behind the mesas, painting the desert in shades of red and gold that photographers drove hundreds of miles to capture. I'd seen it thousands of times, grew up with these sunsets, took them for granted the way you take for granted anything that's always there. But tonight it looked different, more vivid somehow, more present. Maybe that's what survival gave you, not strength or wisdom or transformation into someone better. Just the recognition that ordinary moments were worth showing up for, that the landscape would outlast your crisis, that the people you protected were the reason protection mattered in the first place. My radio crackled, Clara on dispatch, asking if I was clear for another call. Possible vandalism at the community center, non-emergency. Could I check it out? "Copy that," I said. "On my way." I turned the Explorer around and headed back north, toward another ordinary problem requiring ordinary solutions. The kind of work I'd been doing for 11 years and would probably do for 11 more. The kind of work that mattered because the people mattered. The kind of work that was enough, not because it was heroic or dramatic or world-saving, but because it was what was needed when it was needed by people who needed it. And maybe that was the only lesson worth learning from the whole terrible experience. That showing up mattered. That competence mattered. That personal connections mattered. That ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances didn't need to become something else. They just needed to be themselves with all their flaws and contradictions and messy humanity, doing what they could with what they had. The rest was just survival. And survival was enough.